When you picture Appalachia, what do you see? Log cabins and isolation, a story of people that time forgot. The real story is so much more complex, and it doesn't start in the mountains. It starts across an ocean, in a world of chaos and hope. This is the secret ancestry of the Appalachian people. History books give us the broad strokes, English colonies, the push west, but they often miss the details, the actual people who carved a life out of the American wilderness. Between 1720 and 1760, two very different groups of European refugees started a journey that would not only shape their own futures, but forged the very soul of a region. They were the Palatinate Germans and the Scatcherish Presbyterians, and they weren't wealthy aristocrats or the king's favorites. They were farmers, weavers, and religious dissenters, all running from a world that had no room for them, searching for a place they could finally call their own. Their story isn't written on grand monuments. It's in the melodies of folk songs, the patterns of a quilt, and the stubborn, independent spirit that still echoes through the hills and hollows of Appalachia. To really understand Appalachia, you have to understand them. Our story starts in a part of modern Germany called the Palatinate, a beautiful, fertile land along the Rhine River. But for the people there in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, life was anything but beautiful. The Palatinate was a battleground, torn apart for decades by the armies of French King Louis XIV. Entire towns were burned, and crops were torched, leaving people with nothing. On top of all that devastation, there was religious persecution. The local ruler decided the official faith, and if you were different, a Lutheran, a Reformed Protestant, a Mennonite who faced crushing taxes and oppression. And as if that wasn't enough, a period of wild climate change, now called the Little Ice Age, brought unbelievable hardship. The winter of 1708 to 1709 was so cold, people said birds froze in mid-air. Livestock died, and the region's famous grapevines were wiped out, destroying livelihoods. Caught between war, religious conflict, and starvation, the Palatine people looked for a way out. They found it in the promise of the New World. William Penn, a religious dissenter himself, had been actively recruiting Germans to his colony of Pennsylvania, promising religious freedom and, most importantly, land. That news spread like wildfire, and a massive exodus began. Thousands of families took on a dangerous journey, first down the Rhine River to Rotterdam, then across the sea to England, and finally, after weeks or even months on a crowded ship, to the port of Philadelphia. When they arrived, they found the best land in eastern Pennsylvania was already taken or way too expensive, but they had a reputation as being incredibly hardworking and skilled farmers, so they adapted. They started moving south and west, becoming the pioneers of a great migration along an old Native American trail, the Great Warrior's Path. With their Conestoga wagons, which they're often credited with inventing, they turned this path into the Great Wagon Road, the main artery for settling the American back. These German-speaking settlers, who got mistakenly called Pennsylvania Dutch because of a mispronunciation of Deutsch, pushed into Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. They were drawn to the rich limestone soil, which was so much like their lost home on the Rhine. Here, they put down new roots. They weren't your stereotypical frontiersmen, hunting and trapping. They were farmers, first and foremost. They cleared the land, planted fields of wheat and rye, and built solid, sturdy homes. Their most iconic mark on the landscape was the Pennsylvania Bank Barn, a huge two-level barn built into a hillside. This brilliant design used gravity, letting wagons drive right into the top level to unload hay, while the livestock stayed sheltered on the lower level. Many of these barns are still standing today, a testament to their foresight, their work ethic, and their deep desire to build something permanent, a home that couldn't be taken away. These were people who lost everything, came to a new continent, and literally built the foundation for its future, one stone and one timber at a time. While the Germans were busy creating farms in the valleys, another group was pushing even deeper into the mountains, the Scotch-Irish. Now, that name is a bit misleading. It's an American term for a people with a complicated history. They weren't Irish in the Gaelic Catholic sense. They were mostly lowland Scots, who were Presbyterian, and they'd been moved by the British Crown in the early 1600s to the northern Irish province of Ulster. This plan, called the Plantation of Ulster, was meant to push out the native Irish and create a loyal Protestant stronghold, but the Scotch-Irish quickly found themselves stuck in the middle. Their Catholic Irish neighbors saw them as invaders, and the ruling English Anglicans persecuted them, forcing them to pay tithes to the Anglican Church. Beyond the religious tension, they faced economic ruin. England passed laws that crippled the Irish wool trade to protect its own, and landlords started jacking up rent to impossible rates. After 100 years in Ireland, they were again a people without a real home. Just like the Germans, they saw America as their shot at freedom and opportunity. Starting in the early 1700s, 250,000 of them left Ulster for the colonies, a huge migration at the time. They also landed in Philadelphia but found that the orderly, established society of the coast just wasn't for them. They were fiercely independent, toughened by generations of conflict, and they deeply distrusted any distant, oppressive authority, whether it was a British lord or a politician in Philadelphia. So they pushed right past the German settlements, looking for the real frontier. They followed the Great Wagon Road south, but when the valleys got narrow and the land grew steep, they just kept going. They poured through the Cumberland Gap and other mountain passes, becoming the classic pioneers of the Appalachian backcountry. They weren't after the richest soil, they were after freedom. They wanted a place where a family could live on their own terms, answering to nobody. The unforgiving mountains shaped their whole way of life. They built simple log cabins, a technique they probably picked up from earlier Swedish settlers, and they became masters of self-sufficiency. They were hunters and small farmers, raising corn and hogs. Corn was everything. You could eat it, feed it to the animals, and, most famously, distill it into whiskey. For the Scotch-Irish, whiskey wasn't just a drink, it was money, it was medicine, and it was a compact way to get their extra grain to market over the rough mountain terrain. This practice, born out of pure necessity, would become the legendary Appalachian tradition of moonshining. Their culture was all about resilience and defiance. The music they carried across the ocean blended with other sounds and grew into the old-time and bluegrass we know today. Their ballads told stories of love, loss, and hardship, while the fiddle tunes were the energetic soundtrack to life on the frontier. More than anything, they brought a spirit of fierce independence. After being squeezed between powerful forces for centuries, they valued family and community above all else. This legacy of resilience was put on full display during the American Revolution, where Scotch-Irish frontiersmen called the Overmountain Men were key to the massive Patriot victory at the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780 in the isolated valleys and coves of the Appalachian Mountains. These two streams of people, the Germans and the Scotch-Irish, started to mix. They were joined by some English and other groups, but it was really the blend of the German and Scotch-Irish spirit that created the core of a new, unique regional culture. At first glance, they looked like total opposites. The Germans were known for their neat, orderly farms, close-knit communities, and often pacifist beliefs. The Scotch-Irish were known for being individualistic, restless, and more than willing to fight for their place. But on the frontier, they found they had a lot in common. Both groups just wanted to be left alone, free from the religious and political nightmares they'd escaped in Europe. They both valued hard work and self-reliance more than anything. A family's worth wasn't measured by a title or by money, but by their ability to live off the land. This shared experience led to a unique cultural fusion. An 18th century traveler in the backcountry might see a German-style bank barn on one homestead and hear a Scotch-Irish fiddle tune drifting from the next. This new culture, sometimes called the Kahi identity in places like Virginia, was egalitarian and deeply personal. Society wasn't organized around governments, but around family. Your loyalty was to your kin and your neighbors. The fusion of German farming skill and Scotch-Irish frontier toughness created a culture perfectly suited for the mountains. They learned from each other, traded with each other, and married each other, slowly blurring the lines between their old-world identities. We also have to remember, they were not moving into an empty land. This region had been home to Native American tribes like the Cherokee and Shawnee for thousands of years. While there was some trade and cultural sharing, the relentless push from settlers created constant conflict, which ultimately led to the tragic displacement of the region's original people. The Proclamation of 1763, which was supposed to stop white settlement west of the mountains, was almost completely ignored by these settlers, who had very little respect for a king's decree from across the ocean. This defiance only strengthened their identity as a people apart, living by their own rules. The story of the Appalachian people isn't about a single origin. It's a rich and complex culture created from many different threads. The Palatinate Germans brought their agricultural genius and a quiet perseverance, literally shaping the land with their hands. The Scotch-Irish brought their unbreakable resilience and a fierce love of freedom, shaping the character of the people. Together, isolated in the mountains, they made something new. They forged a culture built on self-reliance, deep family ties, and a healthy suspicion of outside authority. The secret ancestry of Appalachia is a story of escape and resilience, of German farmers and Scottish fighters who refused to be broken by the old world and instead built a new one in the American backcountry. Their legacy is unjust in the DNA of the millions of Americans who trace their roots to these mountains. It's in the soul of the place, in its music, its crafts, its stories, and its enduring, independent heart. If this story connects with you, or if your own family history is rooted in these mountains, please share it in the comments below. These stories are a vital part of American history that really deserve to be told. And if you'd like to see more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.